welcome back to my YouTube channel, and this is the part 2 of our travel app series. So in the previous video what we did is that we set up our backend and we implemented a register endpoint, right? And in this video what I'll do is that I'll set up the app side, I'll integrate Koin, I'll integrate Ktor for backend services, and I'll implement the registration feature. So basically, the way we will take this project is that first we will implement an endpoint and then we will implement the UI or the app side functionality for that. So if you remember in our last video, what we did is that we created this call, and what it used to do is that it used to create a user for us and return a token along with that, right? And that's pretty much what we had. I'll be running it right now on my local host, and you should also do it until unless we want to deploy it and use it from a backend server proper, right? So if you haven't subscribed till now, please do subscribe, and let's just jump to the code. Okay, so right now when I open this compose app section over here and go to my common main section, you'll see that we don't have anything. We have this default animated visibility click me functionality, and along with that nothing specific that I can see. Inside the iOS main, you'll see this main controller. That is only one thing over there. And also if I go to my Android section, you will see just this. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll start with implementing Koin first. Okay, so what we will do is that we will implement Koin into this into our compose multi-platform application. And to integrate Koin, we need to do a couple of things that are basically required. And the first thing is to add the Koin dependencies over here. I like over here, when you see this is just a default dependency that when you download the application from the wizard, you see something like this. Okay, I'll just add one more thing into this, and that is going to be iOS main dot dependencies. Okay, that's one thing that we need to do. And once you do that, let's just sync it. Now once you sync it, the next thing that we need is that we need to add the Koin dependencies to it. Okay, and for Koin, what I have all the dependencies that are there. So I'll go over here into my this section, and along with this what I'll do is that I'll add one more name as Ktor, sorry, as Koin. Okay, and I'll add these dependencies over here. Now when we look into this, these are like, one is for Koin core, then there are some Koin Android specific for compose, then it is for the view models that we will be using, and like things like that, right? So I've added all these at one place for now. Along with that, what I need is that I need the version for Koin and compose multi-platform. So I'll get over here and I'll add those versions as well over here, right? So once we do that, you'll see that this is there pretty much done. And now what I'll do is that I'll implement the Koin. Okay, so again, if you remember, I mentioned that when we want one thing to be available in all the modules, we use API for that. So I'll be using API, and over here what I'll do is that I'll go for libs Koin dot core. Along with Koin core, what I'll do is that I'll need some dependencies for compose as well. So for that we will be using the default implementation, since all those will be specific to the common section, so I'll not be using that for other one. So let's just use Koin compose. Okay, then we need implementation libs dot Koin dot compose dot view model. I'm not wrong. Yeah, this is pretty much what we need for our common main. And then we'll go to our Android, because we need some specific Koin dependencies for Android as well. So what I'll do is that I'll go to the Android main section, and over here what I'll do is that I'll define the Koin for Android, Koin Android, and also we will implement implementation something like this. So these are the dependencies that you need to add. You can find this whole code in the GitHub repository that I'll share. And once you do that, what we need to do is that we need to sync it. Okay, so the build is done now, the dependencies are in sync, and now what we need to do is that we need to get over here into our common section, right? And inside this common section, the next thing that we do is that we'll right click over here, and inside that I'll create another directory, and let's call that directory as di. Now this di means that this will basically help us define the dependencies. So now basically you will have we have like this Android section and iOS section, and we need to define. There can be cases where we need specific dependencies being added from like platform specific things. So what we will do over here is that the first thing we need to do is that we need to create a class and define the modules, right? So let's just call it modules. And now inside this module, this file module, what I'll do is that I'll define an expect wall platform modules, something like this, and this is going to be a module. So let's just import it. Okay, so once you do that, it will start complaining that we need to have a specific definition for this in the actual platforms. And for that, what we'll do is that you can either go for with option enter or alt enter if you are using Windows, and you can click on add missing module, and from there make sure to select Android and iOS. Means since I'll be working only on these two, so just select these two and press OK. Once you do that, you will see that your Android main and in your iOS main will have this di module, and both will have this module.android and modules.ios.kt. So this is something that you will get over here, and you just don't need to do anything but just use it something like this for now, equals to module, something like this. Okay, so that's one thing that I'll do for Android, and we will be doing the same thing for iOS as well over here. Now over here what I'll do is that I'll import over here. So what I did over here is that I created an expect function, which means that now if there are any kind of platform specific initialization, that there can be cases where one thing is being initialized differently for Android and it is initialized differently for iOS, those dependencies will go to the platform specific modules. And other than that, what I'll do is that I'll create, let's say, shared module as well, which means that that is just a generic module that we will be used like for, sorry, it's basically shared modules where all the common dependencies will get over here. Okay, and now other than that, since Koin should be started for each platform differently, so what we will do is that we need to create a new class, and let's call this new class as init Koin. Okay, and this is going to be file. Okay, and now this file should be something like, okay, we need to define init Koin. You need to define this function. Okay, now what exactly this means, that we now need to start the Koin over here. So let's say we will do start Koin, and along with that we'll add modules as platform modules and shared modules. Now this should be enough if you are like doing for iOS, but for Android there is one more catch, and there is like we also need to define the context, the Android context that we define. So for that, what we will do is that we will create a config, okay, and that is going to be Koin application declaration, okay, and it can be a nullable thing, so we'll just make it something like this, which means now we can not Koin application, that is going to be Koin application declaration. Okay, now what exactly this means is that this is some sort of a Koin lambda function which we can invoke when if it's not null, right? And in this case what we will do is that we will config and invoke this, and what exactly I mean by doing this, and that I'll show you in a while. Okay, so now we have these two things. We have the start Koin implemented and init Koin functionality ready, and we have these modules, and these modules are already being linked to the Koin over here. Okay, now what next we need to do, we need to specifically initialize the start Koin from each module. Like from iOS it will be separately, and for Android it will be differently handled, right? So let's just start with Android, and for Android what we need to do is that we need to create an application class for that. So I'll go to my Android main section over here, and over here I'll just create a new class. Let's call it Kotlin class, and that class should be named as Traveler app. Okay, and this should be extended as a application class. Okay, something like this. And now from there on create, let's say over here, what I'll do is that I'll call the init coin functionality. Now I mentioned that you can directly call this init coin functionality over here like this will what it will do is that it will just initiate. But what if you want to like use the configuration, you want to pass the configuration as well. So for that, what you can do is that you can define the lambda function like the coin application context that I mentioned. So you can check over here that this is basically the scope for coin application. And now inside that, what I'll do is that I'll define Android context, and that is going to be something like this. Now over here, what this means is that we will be setting the context for Android over here inside this. Okay, and now this Traveler app should be linked to the main inside this Android manifest application. So over here, get over here, and inside this application tag, let's create a new value with the property name, and from there let's just call this Traveler app. Okay, so once you do that, this means that this specific application class will be created whenever application runs, and the first thing that it will do is that it will initialize the Android context. Sorry, it will initialize the coin, and from there it will also assign the Android context to it. Okay, now the Android side implementation is done. Now we'll go to the iOS side implementation. So for iOS side implementation, what we will do is that I'll go over here into this main view controller, and inside this main view controller right now you can see that we have something like this. Okay, we have this compose UI view controller that basically is music. Now from over here, what we need to do is that we need to define some sort of configuration, right? So for what it means is that when we create this view controller, that will basically initiate the app, the composable that we have. What we should do is, what it will do is that it will do it first time. So over here, what we will do is that we will init the coin. And over here we don't want any sort of like specific context setting or something like that, so this should be enough for us. Okay, now once you do these things, this thing over here, let's just try to run if our compose app, let's say let's try with the Android and select this pixel phone emulator. Now let's run it and see if the application is building. If everything is building, means our coin is integration is like working fine. And the next part, what we will do is that we will integrate Ktor, and along with Ktor, what we will do is that we will use the dependency injection. We will add the dependencies to the modules, and then we will try to use those, right? So let's just wait for a while. Let's just see if this builds. And over here you can see that this Android Studio, like this, my Android application is working fine. So which means that whatever I did doesn't break anything, which means our expectation from all this is fine. Okay, now we have this UI for now, but before jumping into the UI implementation, one more important thing we need over here is we need to have some sort of client that can communicate with our backend, right? So let's just do that, and let's just start implementing our Ktor. Okay, for client. So right now, previously we did Ktor implementation for server side, and now we will be using Ktor for our Android. So again, let's just get over here to our build.gradle file of common main. Okay, and beneath here, let's just start adding some dependencies. I have those dependencies over here. So I'll get over here to my over here. What we will do is that we'll say Ktor client. Okay, and for Ktor client, what we need, that there can be something that we can use, like for content negotiation. We have this. We need to define this Kotlin coroutines and Ktor client serialization. Okay, so this is done. Now we need the versions for our Kotlin coroutine and for serialization. So that is done. We have these things, everything is there, that is set up. I guess these, yeah, okay, that's one thing. Other than that, there is just one more thing that I need, and that is these two things. One is for logging, where we will be logging all the responses and requests, and then this is CIO, which is basically for an engine that Ktor will be using. Okay, so now all these dependencies should go to the common main. Okay, so let's just go to our build.gradle file over here now and start implementing. Okay, so to do Ktor implementation, I'll just leave a couple of lines from top and we'll just wait for this. What does it says? Add a couple more dependencies that we are missing over here. That is this. We already have that. Okay. And for this as well, let's just use something like this 2.3.2. Okay, so our Kotlin serialization is done now. Again, let's just retry, and now when I get over here to my common main, the error should go away. And along with that, as I mentioned, that I'll also be implementing the CIOs as well. The client.cio, if I'm not wrong. And last but not least is going to be libs.ktor.client.logging. I guess that was. And once the sync is completed, we'll start implementing the how the client should be implemented, how we can implement the backend request for that. And now let's just go to our common main section again, and over here let's create another directory, and now let's call it data. This is basically the place where we will be placing all our stuff. And from inside data, what I'll do is that the first thing I'll create is that I'll create a new network class. You can basically define some abstraction, and from there you can like maybe use it, but for now I'm just not like complicating things. I'm just going directly with the class implementation, so I'll just create a network service over here as a class. Okay, and one more thing to define over here is that I need to define a client. So what I'll do is that I'll say HTTP client. That is going to be my HTTP client, and that is something that I'll be using like this. Okay, along with that, we can also define our base URL over here. So let's say I'll call it wall base URL is equals to, let's say in our case, that is going to be HTTPS 0.0.0.0, or maybe let's call it local host 8080 for now. Now the next thing is that I need to define some very basic stuff for my implementation. So for that, what I'll do is that I'll create a sealed class. This is going to be my result wrapper. Result wrapper mean that this class will define what exactly do I need in terms of when I'm like creating a request or getting a response, what should I expect. So for success case, this is basically the T, that is a generic. We will define what kind of result we are expecting in this. And in error case, it will be an exception, which means that it can throw an exception, and then maybe we can process that exception and convert it into some relevant data to see how it goes and what exactly it was wrong with it. Okay. Now, one more thing is that there are two ways to implement it. One way is to, like, let's say, for example, if I need to log in, so I'll create a function login, and then inside this login, I'll be using this client and do all the like stuff that is there. Let's say adding the parameters, adding all these kind of things. The problem with this kind of process, like over here, if I do this, the problem with this is that I need to do a lot of things that should be repetitive. Like for example, if I'm going to add the token to the backend request, I'll have to do it like every single time, and after a while again and again. So these kind of things are not good in my opinion. So what I'll do is that I'll define a generic function for this. Okay, the generic function means is that this will help me make the web calls, and I can add some necessary information like whatever I need to add if required. So for that, what I'll do is that I'll create a function. So this function, what exactly this means, that this is going to be a generic function. Okay, and we will be passing some sort of classes to this that will basically define what exactly do we need, what exactly the Over here, if I talk about this, this is going to be an inline function, which means that we will be using the lambda inline over here. And this reified t means that this is the response that we are expecting from the server, right? And the R mean is that this is the response that I want to map into. Let's say the server is returning something else and I want to use a different response so in that case I'll be using this. Let's say if you have some sort of mapping that you want to do, but let's say you don't want to use the mapping and you just like want to get whatever result there is. So in that case what I'll do is that I'll just get rid of this mapper because it doesn't make sense. And over here what we will do is that we will use t, which means that whatever the server is return, we will be using that over here. Okay. And the next thing is that there are some other stuff, like this is the URL, this is the complete URL along with the endpoint. Let's say in our case if a login, which means this will be users slash login, so something like this, then this whole URL will go inside this as over here. The second thing is the HTTP method. So HTTP method can be get, post, or whatever is there. If we are making a post call, then we definitely need some sort of parameters to be added into, like we need to add the body to the for that, and it can be any, and it in our case we can define anything we want. Make sure that these classes are basically serializable, right? Then we have headers. So like if you have some sort of headers you want to add, you can add it over here. For parameters, you can add the parameters into this and things like that. Okay, so now I'll just import the missing things over here, and once we do that, we also need to define this body. And now we will not be mapping anything, so let's just use the direct response over here. Okay, and then we have these different kind of exceptions that can happen. It can be an IO exception, server's response exception, client request exception, and things like that. So we will be handling all those kind of exception and map it into the error and return. So this is just a generic function that I use. And now what I'll do is that, let's say if I have this token that I want to be added every single time to header, so I'll go this dot headers dot append. And now over here what I'll do is that, let's say I'll call it authorization, and along with that I'll be using bearer, and along with the token, that whatever token I receive, so I can just add it over here, and that it will basically append to all the requests, unless like there is a specific request where I don't want to add, right? So like these kind of things are very easy to handle over here like this. Now this is the very generic functionality that I have done. There's nothing very fancy out there, with just some stuff that I want to make it easy when making these web calls and things like that. The important thing over here is that I need to make the HTTP client, and also this network service should be initiated through to dependency injection. And so since this will be initiated through dependency injection, we also need to define the initialization of this HTTP client. And how do we do that? For that, I'll get to my this section, and over here inside this common section, sorry, the shared module section, let's just add these implementation. Okay, so since this is going to be a singleton, I'll add this single. Okay, and now over here what we will do is that I'll say HTTP client. This is again the same thing that I defined. And since I am using CIO, I mentioned that we will be using Ktor CIO engine. That basically works for both Android and iOS. So I'll use this over here as CIO. The next thing is that if you want to install logging into your application, like whenever there is a web call, you want some sort of logs down in the logcat, so you can just use this. And I'm just using a very generic one, nothing very fancy over here. Let's call it something like this: print backend handler dot message, and just get rid of this. Okay, so this will basically just print whatever I need. The second thing I need to define over here is that I need to install the content negotiation as well, because I need to define how my system is going to communicate, right? So for that I'll be using content negotiation, and inside this content negotiation, I'll be defining a JSON, and other inside the JSON, I need to define some properties for JSON, right? So let's say I want to pretty print, I want to make it lenient, and if there are like unknown keys, I would like to ignore them. So things like that. Okay. So once we do that, this means this HTTP client will be created along with an engine. So whatever engine that we need, and now we need to initialize the network service as well. So for that, what I'll do is that make another single call, and inside that I will create a network service. And since I want know that this require a client, so for that I'll use the Ktor Koin injection as Koin get. And this will basically go and search for HTTP client which is being created over here. So it will create this client over here, and then it will assign it to the network service. And this way, our network service will be initiated through dependency injection. So now basically what we have done is that we have integrated Koin and we have integrated Ktor to our compose side, like the app side of implementation. Now what we need to do is that we need to create our first UI screen, or let's say the first login or sign up screen that we want to do. So to do that, the first thing that I'll do is that I'll create a new package, go over here into this Travenor and create a new directory called UI. Okay, and I'm taking this app inside this UI because that is more relevant there. And now inside this UI, let's create a new directory and call it register. Okay, or you can maybe, like, if you want to make it more structured, you can go for feature, and inside the feature you can create another directory with the name of register. Now inside this register, what we will do is that we'll create a new class. Let's say the class is going to be register screen. This is going to be a file. Just make sure that it's a file. Now if we go to our server side implementation, this is the user route, and you remember we had this user request. What it requires for sign up, it requires an email, it requires a password, and it requires a name. So three things are required for this. Okay, and what we will do is that we will be collecting these three things over here. So the first thing over here is that we'll create a composable, and I'll create a function register screen over here. Okay, I'm not doing a lot of other stuff. We will be definitely creating a view model as hell over here, but for now let's just do it this way. Now this is done. The next thing that I need to do over here is that I'll create a surface. Okay, and we'll make it a modifier dot fill max size. Okay, and now inside that I'll create a column modifier fill max size, let's say, and also I want this to make it vertically center, and also I'll want this to align it in the center as well. So this is how it should be done. So these vertically, the content will be vertically aligned and horizontally aligned, in the center as well. And now what I need is that I need to create some sort of design. So the first thing that I'll do over here is that I'll create a simple text, and let's just make it register screen. Rather than doing register screen, let's call it register. And like if you want to have some sort of add some more stuff, like maybe styling and things like that, we'll definitely add styling, but for now let's just make it this thing. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to, let's add some padding over here to this. Okay, and the padding is going to be vertical only, and that is, let's say, 8.dp for me. Okay, and I'll add the padding, overall padding, to the column as well, to be 16.dp, so that it leaves some space. And now under the text, the next thing that I need to do is that I need to create a text field. Yani hai beta, baari hai. So I'll create an outline text field over here. Okay, and I need to define some properties for that. So what I did over here, that we defined it, the value change, what would be the label if we want, like in our case we want this first to be email, and then we had a modifier that says it's going to be field max width and it should vertically be padded as well. So pretty much a lot of things, but also let's just add a state for that. So let's call it email is by remember mutable state of an empty. Okay, so just import this thing. Now we will be using this email over here, and then email is equals to it. Okay, let's make it a var. Sorry. Okay, so once you do that, this is done. The next thing that I need along with the email, I need a password. So let's just create the password for that, and let's create a password like this. And since it's going to be password, I'll make this change to password. Let's use password over here instead. And also, since this is going to be password, we need to update the visual transformation for that. Okay, something like this. Okay, now this is done. Now the next thing is going to be a confirm password. So let's make it a confirm password, this. And also let's just create a duplicate of this, and rather than using password, let's use confirm password and make it like this. Okay, also with the email, before email, what I need is that I need name as well for the user. So I'll create a duplicate of that and make it a name like this. Let's just use this over here like name. So I'll just update this over here like this. Now if you see, I have these four states. Okay, and then each state is assigned to one text field that contains name, email, password, and confirm password. And now we will create a button. Okay, and that is going to be something like this. So over here, this button is taking an on click functionality, and along with that there is this modifier and this padding, everything is done ready. But we also want to make sure to add some validation. So like it will only be enabled if like this email is not like all these things are not empty. Also the password and confirm password should be equal as well. So let's say if I add a different password to this, it will not be enabled, and it will only be enabled only when this all these conditions are satisfied. Okay, now I guess this is done. Now let's just use this use register screen in our app and see how it looks. So I'm just gonna get rid of all these things that I have over here. Let's just get rid of the content and whatever that we have and use a register screen over here like this. Okay, now run this code and see. Okay, now you can see that we have this. Somehow this should horizontally be vertical, but okay. Now let's say if I add a name, it shows me the name, and I can also add my stuff like that. For password, it looks like this and it doesn't enable. So let's say if I add correct values for both, this should be enabled and it can be clickable as well. Okay, so I guess that's pretty much what we wanted over here. Now the next thing is that I need to get rid of this padding from this first, sorry, this width thing. Along with that, I'll also want to make this font size a little bit bigger. Okay, and font weight should be bold as well. Okay, so that's pretty much something that we need in terms of design for now. Now the important thing is that I want this get this data and get it to the backend and see if it's able to communicate. So to do that, we'll create a view model. Okay, now let's just create a Kotlin class again, and from the Kotlin class, let's create register view model. Okay, this is going to be a class, very simple, and then along with the class, let's call it a view model. Okay, so this is something that we need to do. Once you do that, over here what we will do is that we will create some states for this screen. So Let's make it sealed class, register states, and this is something like success, loading success and error. So these are these three things that we will be using. And now let's create a state. So let's over here, what I'll do is that I'll say underscore UI state is equals to mutable state flow, and that is going to be loading, right? But make sure to update it to register state over here like this, so that it can take any of that. Now, make sure to make this mutable state private, because we just want this state, the state of this screen should only be handled through our view model and no other side. Like it should not be available, accessible from the outside. The mutability of this state should not be accessible from the outside of this class. Okay, and we only want to show the read-only state of our UI state to the outside. So for that, what I'll do is that I'll create another UI state, which is going to be a public, and it will basically use the UI state, which is a mutable one, but as state flows to make it immutable. So this way, what it will do is that it will keep the state of this UI state, but this value will only be changed from inside the view model. Since it's private, it's not accessible. Only this is accessible, which is read only. Okay, that's why we basically use these two things like this. The next thing that I need to do is that I'll create a function, and let's make it a register function over here. Okay, now inside this register function, what I need is that I need a couple of things. Let's say I need name as a string, then I need email as a string, and then I need a password as a string. Okay, so let's say I need these three things when the register is done, and when the register is called, the first thing that I need to do is that I need to update my screen with loading, right? So I want to show some sort of a loader to this, and after the loading I'll make the web call, right? And for web call, you know that I have this network repository, network service over here. We can directly like create a function over here. Let's say function register something like this, and make it, sorry, this should be a suspend function. Make sure to make these suspend functions. So that is going to be register, right? And it is gonna take these parameters. I'll more probably go towards the user request model, but something like this. And in return, what it should do, that it should return a result wrapper of some sort of class. Okay, so we need to like implement this function, and for that, what I'll do is that I'll get over here into my data section and create another directory and call it models. Okay, and now over here inside this model should go over here. Sorry, made a mistake. It should go to data section, and inside this data section, let's create a model with request, sorry, a package, and a new package. Let's call this model slash response. So like we will handle the request separately and responses separately. Right now we are talking about request, so I'll create a new Kotlin class, and this Kotlin class should be, let's say, register request. Okay, and that is going to be a data class. Okay, and this, we know that it contains these three things. It should take email, password, and name. And make sure to make it a serializable, right? This is important if you want to communicate. So if it's a serializable, it means that it will be converted into JSON and use it that way. So we need to make it serializable, and when you use it, it will complain because we haven't added the properties to the module. You can see it says that Kotlin serialization X compiler plugin is not applied to the module. So make sure to add this plugin to your, like, add the serialization modules over here as well. Over here, what I'll do is that I'll use the serialization, and now let's just sync it. And once we sync it, we'll hopefully okay, it will download a couple of dependencies. Once that is downloaded, we should, this error that we have to go away. Okay, now you can see that the warning is gone away. Okay, now you can see that this request model is done, and now we need a response model, right? So just create another package over here. Sorry, another, like, go to the response package over here and then create a new Kotlin class, and let's call it register response. Okay, and that is again going to be a data class. And how do we know that? What exactly do we get? For that, I'll take a little bit help from our server side models. And you know that we have this user response that contains this user class and this string. So I'll just use the same thing over here. Pretty simple, right? And definitely we don't have the user, so I'll just go over here and then create this, like copy this user class from there to our model class outside. Okay, now just make sure one thing is that right now you can see that I'm using user at two different ways, and that is because I have these modules separately. We can maybe define like a generic model, which is not a, like, it can be a good idea in one way, but it also sometimes can mess up. So what I did is that I created these two different response objects over here, request and response objects over here, and then I have the class based on the response over here. Now, since I know that I need a register response from the server, so I'll define this over here like this. Okay, and now the next thing is that we need to do is that something like this. We will be making a new web request. Also, this function should contain a request object that is going to be register request. So we'll use this. Okay, and you know that for body we have this body, and we will be adding this request into this. Okay, other than that, if you have some sort of headers and things like that, you can add it over here. And also make sure that this user register is also users as well, because if we go to my server, I mentioned it in my server video as well over here inside this routes. You can see that it takes users and then register. So make sure to follow the same path over here. And this is the base URL, users and register. And that is how it will be, like, what it will do, that will make this request. And this make web request should be something like you can define if you want. Although it will by default be converting it to that, but this is something that we have passed, and now it will just process it accordingly. Okay, so once this all process is done, this register we can be called. But how do we call this? There are two ways. One way is to directly use it in the view model, which is like not a very good solution. We should better handle it through repositories and things like that. But I just don't want to complex a lot of things, and I'm just focus on the learning first. So what I do over here is that I'll take this as a parameter, okay, and I'll say wall network service like this. Okay, and now inside this section, now I know that I need to make some request over here. The first thing that I'll do is that I'll go for view model scope.launch, so that it runs under the coroutine, and I'll be able to run the suspend function over here. And then I'll say wall response is equals to network service dot register. Okay, and now you know that it requires a register request, so I'll create another register request, and then I'll just pass these values into this. Okay, pretty straightforward. Now once this response is received, the next thing is that I need to verify if the response is success or a failure, right? So I'll make it response, and it should be something like this, rather than using this result wrapper dot success. Okay, and the second thing is going to be result wrapper dot error. Pretty straightforward, right? And in case of success, we will be showing a success message. In term of error, we want this exception from this, so I'll be using response dot e dot message. And like, you can also parcelize this message into a proper error, but for now let's just use it this way. Okay, now what happens, like, if you may try to register, it will go check with the server. If it's a success, it will give you success state, else it will give you an error state. And now let's just implement this thing into our UI. Okay, so to do that, the first thing that I need to do is that I need to define a view model. So over here, I'll say this register view model is equals to a Koin view model. Just make sure to do it this way. And now when I use this, The problem with this is that you need to like assign it in the dependency injection as well. And now over here, if I go to my DI section into this modules, we haven't done anything like that, right? So there are two ways. Either you like create a view model separately, a module separately, and directly use them, or you can also add this directly to this. And for that, what we will do is that we'll create a view model, and that view model should take register view model, and then it will be get like this. Okay, so basically the Koin view model, when we assign something into Koin view model, it will look for this, and if that object is available, like if that class is available, it will just create that reference and then assign it over here like this. Okay, so now we have this view model. Great. So once we have the view model, we need to define is that we need to take out the state from this. So let's call it a state is equals to view model dot state dot collect as state. Okay, so whenever there is a change, we want to access that. And then now over here, again, based on the state, what we did is that we check if it's loading, we show loading. If it's a error, we show error. If it's a normal success state, I will also add one more state to this, and that is going to be our object nothing as register state. Okay, something like this. Why I'm using nothing? Because that is basically when we will actually be showing the normal UI to the users. Okay, so now I have this nothing, and I'll go over here, and then along with that, what I'll do is that I'll create this nothing state as well. Okay, and this nothing state should contain all this thing, this whole column. Where is this? Okay, so I'll just cut, and inside this nothing, I'll show this mod. In case of success, let's say just for now I'm just using a success message like this. Maybe we can update it later on, but for now let's just use the text success, and definitely be navigating it to different screen. In case of error, I'll be showing a text message as an error, but we should also be creating a button that should reset the state of the view model, right? So let's call it retry. Yeah, the retry sounds good. Okay, and then for text loading, it should be not loading, it should also contain a circular progress indicator as well. Okay, and now I'll also be using one more thing over here like this, and what it means that now it will take everything to center. Everything should be in the center. Okay, so this is pretty much everything we have done. We have also the button over here now should be using view model dot register, right? And in term of register, it will just pass name, email, and password. So once all these things are done, it will be just passing that. In case of error, what we will do is that we would want the view model to view model dot retry, and this retry function over here, what I'll do is that I'll just create the UI state to again into nothing, so that it can take the values. Okay, I guess that's pretty much what I have done. One more thing, if you are testing on Android, that is important to remember, and that is to add the permission. Okay, so you need to define users permission internet for that. Other than that, it will not work. And now let's just try to run this and see if this works. What I'll do is that I'll add some values to this, click on register, and that register should allow me to register. And when I try the same email again, it should fail. That's more probably what I want over here. And again, this is one more issue that I created inside this view model, that I set this first thing to be loading, but what I want is I want to set it to nothing, because that is when I'll be shown the content of my screen. Okay, so let's just wait again. Now it will run this time again, and now we have this thing done. Okay, I'll create name, Now if I click register, it will straight away fail, saying that failed to prepare request body for sending the body plus request is not available with content type null. Okay, so I guess there is just one more thing that oh yeah, okay. So we need to define this over here. We need to define the content type dot application dot JSON so that it knows that how it is going to communicate, right? Since we initiate, like set the negotiation to be JSON, you need to define this content type as well. Now hopefully when I run this, it will fail because my server is not running, and there is also one more thing to do, but let's just see. Now it says that serializer for content not found. Please ensure that class mark is available, and then the serialization compiler plugin. We do have this. The plugin is also implemented, if I'm not wrong, or do I need to implement this in the android.gradle file as well? Okay, so there's just one more thing that we have missed over here, and that is that we need to define the serialization over here. Okay, and what I'll do is that I'll use the 2.0.20, which is the latest one and also used by our server as well, and just make sure to update this over here as well, and then let's try again. And this time when I do this, hopefully it will be working as we expect. Basically the server will still not be able to execute it, and it will not be able to test exactly if we are able to that basically the sign up stuff. But what I want to show you is that when I do some stuff and when we run this, like, it should show a different result rather than the request not being serialized. Okay, now we are here as register. Let's add these value, and now when I see click on this, it says connection refused, which means that the server is not able, we are not able to find that server, right? And so what I'll do is that I'll run my Ktor server from here, and I'll go over here from this to application.kt, and then just click on that. That should hopefully run the server for me. You can see it has started, and now it started responding to it. But still, when I try from here, it will not be working. The reason it will not work is basically when we run emulator, the 0.0.0, like 127.0.0 that we use, the local host will be redirected towards its own address, right? And we want to define a different server for our emulator, right? So for if we are communicating from server from emulator to your device, to your machine, what you need to do is that you need to define something else. So that is going to be your the URL for this. This means that the 10.0.2.2 means that now the emulator will point to our machine, that machine that I'm running, right? So make sure to update this when you are running on an emulator, okay? And now when sorry, just mistakenly rerun the backend. So okay, it's no worries. Now I'll run again the compose app from this, and hopefully when this time when I run this, we will be able to uh, create our account, or maybe like make the first step. Let's call it Furkan, and this time I'm gonna say code with fk@gmail.com. Password is 12345 12345, and might not be sure that there might be something with that, so I've added this. And now when I click on this, it says TLS record type code 72. Again, there is some sort of communication issue. You can see over here, although you can see that we made the request along with this, the logs you can see, but somehow this endpoint fails, and the reason I know why. So basically the problem with this section is that what we are doing is that we are using an HTTPS, since my local server is running without HTTPS, so that's why it's failing to connect, and that's why I need to change it to HTTP. Okay, now when I run this, hopefully this time when we execute, it should work, and let's wait for that. Okay, now I'll just add some clean data. Okay, and then 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, when I click on register, it should Now you can see that it was able to create an account for me, and if I go to my logs this time, you will see that this was the request that we made. We requested HTTP to register it. We added this email, password, and name to this, and in return, what it did is that it created a user for us along with this token. And that is exactly what we wanted, and how we basically implemented the backend. So this was, I would say, it for today's video, and I hope you like the video. Please do comment below if you have any sort of suggestions or comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Please share the video, and I'll see you in the next video. In the next video, what we will do, in the next video we will do login, and we might do a couple of more endpoints, and then also integrate it from the UI. So till then, have a great day, happy coding, and I'll see you in the next. Bye.